I wrote sometimes about the kolea, the Pacific golden plovers, and people would write me and ask me questions about the bird, and I didn't know much about them. No one really did. And so one day I got a letter. This was in the old days. It was in the snail mail from a guy named Oscar Johnson, Wally Johnson, who was in Bozeman, Montana as a professor there of seabird biology. And he wrote me and said, well, I've had some papers that I've published in some journals. Would you like me to send them? So, because I saw your columns and I know people are asking questions. So he sent me the journal articles. I would read them and then answer the questions. So that kept up for a while. And pretty soon we were doing that by email. It got easier. But one day, a few years, this went on for years and years. And a few years ago, Wally said, I said, Wally, we need to get all of your journal articles together and rewritten in a way that people can read them, because they're scientific journals. And because there's so many people who love these birds. And so together we collaborated, because popular science is my specialty and kolea science is his. And he's just the nicest guy. Some of you probably met him when he comes to speak, but he has never lived in Hawaii. He started off in seabird in shorebird biology in Anahuac, and kind of got into it by accident because he was in Anahuac studying kidney function in seabirds and how they excrete salt. And so he wondered what these birds were doing in Anahuac, and no one knew. Everyone said, I don't know. Well, where do they go? I don't know. They're only here half the year. So that was in 1972, I think. And in 1979, he started the Pacific Golden Plover Project, and he's still going. He's 84 now. He comes twice a year, and he's still actually doing some really great work. Oh, good. We're going to try this.
Dug it up from the catacombs. All right.
Testing. Good. That's good. Good. Not good.
One second. Is this better or worse?
Wait, why is that? No, turned on the game. Yeah.
Hello?
There.
Oh, yeah, that's good. Oh, great. So the good news is that the bottom line is in 2016, the University of Hawaii Press gave us a contract that Wally and I could collaborate on a book on golden plovers. And I brought a few just so you can see. And if you would like one, the best place to get them, I only have 4 here, is from the Hawai'i Audubon Society, because that's one of their fundraisers, that and the White Tern book. So anyway, to get going, the beginning of the book starts out, my kolea is back, because that's the greatest, most fun part of August. And get so many emails that say, the kolea is back in August, isn't that early? And that's year after year after year. They've been coming back in August probably for, I don't know, millions of years probably. But the males come back in August. The females follow. The females come back. They're the ones exhausted from laying all those huge eggs. And then the males follow. And then the offspring from that season come quite late. Wally says up until November. As long as they can hang out in Alaska and still have some nutrition, they'll stay, because they really need to bulk up. And he thinks only about 20% actually make it to Hawaii and through that first year. So life's really hard. They've got to figure out how to get here on their own, because the parents leave before them, and then they've got to find foraging places. So this is my guy, Jake. He lives in my yard. Wally said when he's here, he lets people help him put the tags on. And there's nothing in the world more wonderful if you like these birds than to be able to get your hands on one. And Wally has a lot of these pictures and said everybody who holds one, it just immediately bursts into smiles. The ancient Hawaiians knew a lot about kolea. They had a god, was a god of healing, and the word kolea means one who takes and leaves. And so that's what they noticed. They come here, they get fattened up, and then they leave. And so I think that's kind of a good one. What is the other meaning? One who takes, boastful. That's another meaning of kolea, but okay. The ancient Hawaiians ate them. They were a food source. They have a lot of fat on them in the spring. And so this is called a kolea stone. And they would tie a piece of twine around it and put a thorn with a grub. And when they ate the grub, the thorn would stick sideways in its throat, and then they could haul it in. This is Wally did a slide. These are a lot of the slides are Wally's, most of them actually. So sometimes they try to get them in this noose, and other times they would catch them that way. And they would use the fat also for their candles for lights because of there's such high fat. They were also on the menus at Iolani Palace, plovers on toast. It's kind of horrifying to us today, but that's how it was in the day. And people used to hunt them, and the limit was 15 per day. Imagine that. There's records from the past that said that don't count them, but just say that the whole hillsides were full of them. And so people were shooting them way more than 15 per day. The records show that people didn't pay any attention to that. As they saw the populations decreasing, they started the hunting ban. And then after the war, they never let them hunt them again. So the remarkable thing, the thing I love so much about these birds is they have completely, this population, not all, but this one in Hawaii has adapted to us. And if you're going to make it in this planet, these animals are going to do best who have adapted to human interference in their habitat. But what they really love is open space and low vegetation. So they also like to sleep on flat roofs because they're up high away from the predators. So you'll see them. This is at Ala Moana Longs, and they're on my flat roofs with a bunch of flat townhouses, and you can hear them up there squabbling at night. They're elbowing. I said to Wally, "What are they talking about all night?" And he said, "I think they're elbowing each other. Move over, move over." They swim in our pools. This was in Kauai when I went with him to do some tagging. And they come to our yards, and they come to the same place every year. So once a chick has arrived and has survived and found a place to be, you can count on that bird for the average is 6 to 7 years, but the oldest has lived to 21. So you may have a friend for a really long time. This is a white bird named Gracie, and she's standing on the outside of the screen on a lanai, and that's my little dog who was quite old, but that bird knew when the screen was closed, it was okay to come up there, and when it was not closed, she never came up. But the dog didn't pay any attention to her. She was quite old, but I thought it was pretty remarkable. I'd be sitting on the living room couch watching this plover walking back and forth on the lanai with the dog right there. But they have truly adapted to people. They like miniature golf. They're quite good at it. They love the flat green artificial grass because the insects can't dive down into the soil. So they're fairly common on our artificial grass. And my friend from HPU sent me this. He sent me this and said, "Look, there's a plover in the middle of the Poly Highway back when the Poly Highway was open." And I said, "Where? I don't see it. Where?" So I finally saw it, but it hung out there the whole season. And look, the traffic drives us crazy, but it doesn't bother the birds at all. So this was a banded bird that Wally banded at Bellows, and it lived to be 21 years and 3 months, and he didn't know how old it was when he banded it. It could have been a year old, so it could be older. But so far, that's the age record, and Wally calculated how many wing beats that bird had flown in 21 years. I got to go over there and see him. It was quite good. This is Punch Bowl, which Wally says is a 5-star hotel for our plovers, because there's about 100 acres in there and about 80 to 100 birds. He said this time he was here, he said there was about 80 birds. So it looks like the numbers, people ask me if the numbers are increasing or decreasing, and no one knows. There's no count. And it'd be really great to have a count, and it probably wouldn't be too hard because they come to the same place every year. So if you have a bird and you know, we could set something like that up. So hopefully in the future there'll be more counting like there is now with white terns. But they're very territorial. So if they're in Punch Bowl, it doesn't mean that they're running all over Punch Bowl Cemetery. They each have about an acre. And if one gets too close to the line, the invisible line, they'll run up and down and posture and make threats to each other to stay back. This is my space. Don't get here. And this was on a street. There were two squabbling, and they were quite vicious. These sweet little birds that we love so much, they just get really, really mad at each other if one gets in its territory. But that's a matter of survival, and that's why when they come to one place and they made it through the year, they know that that's got enough food and enough protection from predators for whatever reason, that's the place to come back to the next year. This is on the golf course. I live on the Mid-Pacific Golf Course in Kailua, and this was one of the very few pictures Wally's ever seen of a male and female together in the spring. And the male's the dark one with the black center, the black white racing stripe, we call it, and the female is more mottled on the other side. And so he said, well, are they pairing up here and then flying to Alaska together? We don't know. So, but they get awfully friendly about now in April. They're not friendly before that. Last year, someone from Ford Island who was working out of Ford Island sent me this picture, and this was a staging ground. And she looked out and we sent this everywhere. He said, wow, this is so cool, because it's hard to find. They gather together before they take off, but we don't really know where and what day they're going to do it. So having this picture was pretty cool. And also they're closer together than they ever would be during their foraging time. So they leave here April 26th. I like to say the date because usually it's April 26th or April 27th, which my husband says, oh, they have really good iPhones, so they can tell exactly, we have GPS, what day it is and what time, but they're clued to the length of day. So it could be the 26th. Wally says that late April or early May, but usually they're all gone in a day or two. So the day you see one missing, you probably won't see anywhere else. And this last year, I think it was the 27th last year. I said the 26th in my column, and then people wrote me, of course, and said, my bird's still here, but that was it the next day. So it's pretty close. 3,000 miles in 3 days, which is amazing. On the way back, it's 3,000 miles of same distance, but it's 4 days because they're swimming. They're flying against the jet stream, so it takes them longer to get that. This is nonstop, which is an amazing thing. They don't have webbed feet, so they can't land on the water, and they don't rest. So on both places, they have to be really fat. They weigh about 4 ounces, which is just amazing during their lean times in the winter here, and they go up to 7 ounces in the spring and in Alaska. And all that extra 3 ounces, it's almost doubling their weight, is all fat, and that's fuel for them to make that 3,000-mile trip without stopping. So this is where they go. This is some of the great work that Wally was publishing that none of us knew. So we're really happy that we got to work together to get this out to the public. But this is where they go. These are from individual birds. And so, yeah, there he goes, 40 miles an hour average for the northward flight, which is an amazing thing. And this is the other population. There's a huge other population of Pacific golden plovers that that don't come to Hawaii. They go from Alaska. These are all in the South Pacific. They go to Japan because they can't carry enough fat. They can't fly. They got that fat, they couldn't fly. So they have to stop in Japan, where they land in the rice fields and eat the insects out of the rice fields. And the farmers love that because they're eating the bugs. And the birds like it too. So, and it's a safe place to go. And then from there, they make it to the Arctic. So this is the two populations. The red one is ours, of course. And so we go, that's a nonstop flight. And then the other ones go they fly much further. You can see the difference. There is, in Hawaiian, we've been talking about this in Hawai'i Audubon, there's chants, there's a postage stamp, and in hula, and what else? Just legendary Hawaiiana, that the Polynesian voyagers followed the kolea north. Well, it doesn't look like the ones that were in Tahiti or the Marquesas came to Hawaii. It looks like, because that far south one is where Tahiti and Marquesas are. So those went to Japan, and then from Japan to there. But as Wally said, I just asked him this week about that, and he said, well, things could have been different then. Things could have changed. And also, we all assume that the Polynesian voyagers were following them north, but he said maybe they saw them coming from the north. So there's all kinds of different ideas. But in any case, the Hawaiians noticed them and knew that they were migrating back and forth somewhere up there. So these are the two different breeding areas. The red dots are Hawaii's birds, and the blue dots are the South Pacific's birds, because those are the ones that take longer. But also they take longer, and so they arrive in the Arctic, in the far, far north, in the blue dots later, because there's still snow up there. And so the snow melts in the south first, of course, and then the birds in the north are nesting later and having chicks later than ours. And these are the two, the red is where all the nesting areas are of the Pacific golden plovers, both populations, and the blue is the wintering grounds. So you see Hawaiian Islands are a little line there, and then Wally has just recently tagged some in New Zealand, and he said he hasn't got the information yet. Put the tags on, and it talks to the satellites, and then the satellites relay the information to him. And so we're not sure yet where those birds are going to go. But New Zealand is the furthest that they spend their winters. I have to put Wally in here. Of course, he's Mr. Kolea. He's the bird guy. He wrote me today and said, good luck tonight. I'll be there in spirit. He's such a nice guy. He's really good and still full of bird energy, really. These are the bands that he puts on their legs, some of them. There's a number. The aluminum ones are numbered and recorded in Virginia. So if you find a dead bird, you can find out where that was banded and how old it was. And it's the only way you can get any information from birds, really, is to put the bands on. And the colored bands he did for a while, so you could see the order of the color without actually having to catch the bird. Because the bands, you really have to catch the bird to read those little numbers. But the colors, you could say, oh, green, blue, yellow, and then he knew which bird that was. And this is how he catches them. He puts up what's called a mist net, and it's very fine netting. And so the bird flies into it. You have to get them up at 4 a.m. This is hard work. You have to have it up before first light, and then the bird flies into it. And as soon as there's a bird in it, and of course other birds fly into it too, but as soon as you get a plover, they run up and gently release it. And he said he's never in all of his years had a bird that was injured by doing this. And the nice thing about our kolea, as much as we love them, they're that mellow. Look at this bird. He's looking. It's like, what's he doing to my leg? They don't fight. They don't try to bite you. Even the little white terns that can't bite you, they're like snap, snap, snap on your feet because they're frightened. But these birds, well, he says, I think they just give up. It's just like, well, I'm caught. That's it. I'm toast. But they're actually very gentle and they're not kicking. It's an amazing thing to hold these birds because they They just lie in your hands. And these are some of the pictures of some of his banding. And then, and thanks to modern wonderful technology, he can put on now satellite tags, GPS tags. So these little waterproof tags are only very light. They're just a few grams, very light. And then they speak to a satellite and tell the researchers where the bird is. The problem with these is they're very expensive, about $2,500 each. And you have to if you don't get it back, you've lost it, but you do have the data. And so in the old days, you could put a band on, and it was called a data logger. And then you have to get the bird back to get the data to download it into your computer. But now you can get it from the satellite. You don't have to catch the bird, except you've lost $2,500, because you can recharge these batteries and use them again and again if you can get the bird. But once these birds are caught, I'll show you later, you're not going to get it caught again. It's really, really hard. So there, it's letting it go. These are some pictures of they don't peck at it, they don't look at it. It's just like, well, I got a bracelet, oh well. So they go to those red dots, blue dots, whatever they were, in Alaska, which is around Nome. And the nice thing is you can fly to Nome and then get a car and kind of drive her out to the tundra, to their nesting grounds. And this is what it looks like. Sometimes they get there when it's snow, and people have said to me, how do they know if there's still snow there? Well, they have no idea, of course. So they go at a certain time, length of day, and it's worked before, and so that's their thing. If it gets warmer, and things are getting warmer up there, the birds will change, and we know they're very adaptive because they're living with us. So when they get there and there's still snow, there's no insects to eat, because then the Arctic is just swarming with mosquitoes and insects, but they eat berries. So the blue ones are last year's berries. I took pictures when I was in Alaska last year, and they can eat the freeze-dried berries that got freeze-dried during the winter, and then the green berries are the new ones that are coming out. So they eat berries there a lot until the insects start hatching. When you see, we're up feeding our birds and throwing them egg and healthy food here. You can't get anywhere near these birds in Alaska. They are raising their families, and they are completely wary. We are predators to them there, and it's the same bird. So you want to say, don't you remember me? You liked me in Hawaii. They have a lot of predators, and that's the reason they're always alert to predators. They're always trying to protect their chicks. So the caribou stomp over their nest and break the eggs, and if they see the eggs, they'll eat them. There's these muskox. Yeah, this is in the road blocking our way, and ravens. There's lots of ravens looking for food. And this raven is actually, the foxes are a really big predator of plover eggs, but this raven is really giving this fox the one too. And I took this picture and thought, I can't believe that raven is really messing with that fox. But both of these animals are predators of the plovers. Yeah, but he dispatched that fox in good order. And the big bird predator they have are called Pomeranian Jaegers. And I asked, it's called Jaegers. It's a German word for hunter. And I asked my friend David today, how do you say Jaeger? And he said Jaeger. And he does speak German, and he said it's German for hunter. And so Jaegers are on always as high as they can get, because they're always on the lookout, and they're big predators of the plovers, chicks and eggs. And here's the 4 eggs. She lays the 4 eggs one a day, and the 4 eggs equal the female's entire weight. So it's an amazing biological feat to be able to lay 4 eggs. And the amazing thing to me is if a Jaeger eats those eggs, she will lay 4 more in the same season. It takes a week or 2 for her to get up the energy, but she will lay 4 more eggs. And so it's just an astonishing thing. but they're really hard to see. And this picture just shows you the size of an egg compared to the females, so it's quite a feat. The male, do you have a question?
Yes.
What?
If the females lay 4 eggs that are the same weight as they weigh, won't they just lose their weight?
Yeah, that's a good question. If they lay 4 eggs that weigh how much they do, will they lose all their weight? Well, they eat a lot of berries and insects, so they have a lot of extra weight when they're laying eggs. But it is an amazing thing to think of, really. Yes.
But if you touch their babies, I think just kill their babies.
Well, that's a good question. He said, if you touch the babies, will the parents kill the babies because they've been touched? And that is a myth. It's a myth we all grew up with. Our moms used to tell us not to touch the birds, because the parents would abandon them. And that was probably to keep us kids out of the nests. But no, it's not true. I've handled and worked with seabird and forest bird people for decades, and it's not true. They don't know. They don't know that. All they want to know is that the chick is still there and still alive and still wants food. So the parents come back. If it's there, they'll feed it. That's a good question. So the male, if you get near a nest, the male pretends he's injured. And there's a lot of species of birds that do that. He'll go limping and his wings hanging and he looks injured. So the predator will follow him and stay away from his kids. And there he is trying to defend. It's another tactic, defending his nest. And these are chicks that are hatched. Now, when I was there, we were there doing some other recovering some tags, and so the chicks weren't hatched, but Wally has these pictures, and they are really, really cute. They hatch pretty close to the same time. When she lays the eggs, she doesn't incubate them completely as warm as they need to be to hatch. So the first few eggs are cooler than the last egg, so they all hatch at the same time. So that's another really amazing adaptation, because they need to hatch at the same time, because they stand up as soon as they get dry. This is them. There they are. The parents see the egg. The parents pick up the eggshell and carry it away as soon as the chicks are done with it, because the predators can see that, because it's white and it's really easy to see. Yeah. The great thing is these chicks, they're like chickens. They start eating immediately. They're on their own. As soon as their little feathers dry, they're completely on their own, and they start eating and running around getting berries and bugs, and their legs are as tall as they are as an adult. And also, they're as big around. So here's the parents let them run around like chickens, but if there's a predator or if it gets cold, he or she, mom or dad, will sit on the chicks to warm them up or to protect them. So you see the little chicks poked out the front of the dad. And can you see the chick in here? It's right in the center. It's a little yellow thing. And so they hide, the chicks hide. If they see a Jaeger flying overhead or there's some other threat, they'll duck in the tundra weeds, and you really, really can't see them. It's right in the very center there, the little yellow. And so Wally said the legs are big enough that you can put the adult bands on right after they're born. And you need to do that because they start all running around, and they're kind of done with the nest. As soon as the chicks are hatched, it's like chickens. I always think of chickens too. They don't care about the nest anymore. They care about food. And so, but he can get the bands on, and then those are the bands that'll hopefully stay on as adults. Those little wings grow really amazingly. In like a month, they can fly. So and the great thing, one of the theories of why would they fly 3,000 miles, raise their chicks, fly 3,000 miles back, is because there's food 24 hours a day. It's light all day, all night, and there's just an enormous amount of food there in the Arctic. And so these chicks grow really, really fast. They would never be able to grow this fast anywhere else. I get a lot of emails that say, I know that kolea don't have chicks in Hawaii, but I saw some. So my kolea has chicks. And these are not chicks, they're ruddy turnstones. So they're another species that are remarkable in all of their own ways. That's a whole nother story, but they're all migratory shorebirds that go also migrate. But they're smaller. They do hang out sometimes together. And so if you see these, the ones with the white breasts are ruddy turnstones. When the chicks, so I said the moms leave in August, then the dads, and then the chicks are on their own, and they've got to get as fat as they can before they leave. And when they get to Hawaii, this is what they look like. They're so skinny. And I've seen the birds looking like this, like walking around the roads, and they're kind of pecking at things. So since the population does not seem to be increasing, the overall population in Hawaii of kolea, that's how Wally calculated about only about 20% make it, because about 20% mortality rate of adults over, when they die of old age. So it's a tough life. They've got to find Hawaii, and then they've got to find food. So that's a real skinny bird. Last year we found a white one. A guy who drives a cab, who takes me to the airport, who reads my column, guy saw this bird at Hawai'i up here, and he emailed me and said there's a white plover. So I jumped in my car. I'm on the windward side anyway, and I named her Blanche, and she was just gorgeous. And so I sent these pictures to Wally, and he said, I've never seen anything like it in all these years. Now, she wasn't, we thought it was a bird, there's a condition called leucistic birds that are white, but she's not leucistic because she's got some color. And then as you can see, there's little color, so she's got a mutation, a color mutation rather than being leucistic. And this was in April. So I watched her all year, and then she looked pretty much the same, but come April, March, April, she started turning dark like this. And I say she, it could have been a male, we don't know. But she had those colors, and I just published a paper on this, on Blanche. She's in a place where they're dropping off busloads of tourists. And so all have been out there. My husband Craig's ridden his bike out there a dozen times, and we've not seen her again. So Wally thinks she might turn up somewhere, but after being in Alaska and watching those predators, I think, she's white. It would be really hard for her to survive. So while they're here, they're eating. The other really great thing for us, since we've introduced so many alien insects and worms and all kinds of invertebrates, is that the plovers love those. So that's one of the reasons they like not only the open space, but we've filled it up with cockroaches and centipedes and geckos and every other thing. And so they're constantly eating here. They really like ironwood trees, and they fly to get to because the needles make mats, and then under the mats are really lots of bugs. And so they'll fly straight down and straight up because it's hard to get in and out of the ironwood forests. But they have really good maneuvers, and then they'll hunt around in there. That'll be their space. They're called shorebirds, but we don't see them at the shore very often. But one of my biologist friends sent me this picture and said, look what I found on Maui. This was in the Kolea Ponds in Maui. And so this is the first time Wally's seen one with a fish. So there it is with its prize. But that was a pretty good, and Robert's a really good photographer, so he lets us use his pictures. So I think maybe in the old days, before we had made all these golf courses and all these lawns, they probably were more on the shore. So this was when Wally was in American Samoa. He said there was a plover that you can see in the foreground. It's not a great picture of it, but it's there. And people would come out and they liked it. They would give it French fries. And so they'd carry the French fry up to the top of the roof, the high roof, and that to get it away from the minus, because the minus would come over to get its French fry. And then it would sit up there, and for whatever reason, the minus didn't follow it back up to the top of the roof. It would eat its French fry, and then it would come back down and wait for another one. But French fries are not what we want to feed these birds. But it just shows how adaptable they are. It's like, wow, fat is fat. They need the fat, but they also need protein. So this is, I think this is one of my birds. This is Gracie on my lanai. And what she's got in her mouth, and the reason she's on my lanai is this. So Wally said he has no problem feeding these birds. They're totally adapted to people. They're in our yards. They're eating alien things that they didn't evolve to eat. And they're, hanging out in traffic and every other thing. And he thinks if you want to feed them, that's fine. Feed them either eggs. We started out with boiled eggs, but those were a little harder. So because the eggs are just protein and fat, and that's really what they like and want. Or you can buy mealworms in the pet stores. I have a neighbor who buys crickets, and then she just, it's kind of hard. She kind of wounds the cricket so it can't really jump too far. And then she holds it in her hand and she says, "Pluvy, pluvy, pluvy." And the bird comes down off the roof and takes the crickets out of her hand. So this is Gracie out on the manhole cover. And if you do feed them, you've got to get a trick. You got to get some way to get these Brazilian cardinals and the minas from not grabbing in bubbles first. So I have a little thing. I go around a corner. I give them some other things, and then I'll come back and do that. Usually the plovers will come closer than the other birds, but it's a trick. And here's a female, and there's the male. These are the ones in my golfers, changing colors. It's hard not to just take millions of pictures, because I get up to get coffee, get up from my computer, and it's like, oh, that's so beautiful. I can get my camera, and I stick around for it. So last year, a plover lover emailed me and said there's a plover with a broken leg in the Kailua Beach Park. Can we help it? And so we went through this huge thing. I called Fish and Wildlife Service, who had a net gun. And what those are is you shoot it with a CO2 cartridge, and the net flies out and catches the bird. So we found someone, and this poor thing, it was just breaking our hearts. Everyone was watching, what are we going to do, and trying to help. And she was eating okay. So there's Josh. I find a guy who had worked with Wally, who was good at the net gun. So here he is loading it up. That's what it looks like. And the net comes out of the wide end, and there's a CO2 cartridge in, so you hold it up like that, and then it shoots out. But what happened was he shot it. He's reloading it. But he shot it, and since her leg was broken, she was only hopping on one leg, and the other one was a bit of an impediment. She didn't flee the way they normally do. And so that's what he was used to catching them with Wally. And so the net went further than she did, and then she just, flew. She could fly, so she flew away under it. So he's reloading the gun, and we had the best time at the park because Josh was trying to hide from her, and so he's doing it, and she's like this, watching, and so I said, I'm just going to stand back and try to not be part of this because she can see me. And so I'm laughing because every time he would crouch behind something else, she would just move over and do like this. And so she saw them, and finally I said, Josh, you're never going to get another shot. And so unfortunately we tried really hard, and we were all on our own time. He said, I'm supposed to be at work. I'm not, this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. But, everyone had some compassion for this bird, and we really tried to get her. So we didn't catch her, and she didn't last through the season because there's too many cats in that park. So last June, this previous June, I said to Wally, well, my birthday's on the summer solstice, and I always wanted to be in Alaska on the summer solstice. And he said, well, come with us. We're going to recover some tags. So I flew to Nome with Wally and a couple undergrads from BYU and a couple other people who had worked with Wally in the past. And I had never been to Nome. It's quite a place. This is called the Three Swedes, because the legend there, this is so funny. The legend there is that 3 Swedes found gold and founded Nome. And when you go up and read the writing, you know, the history, they're all from. Go figure, right? Yeah, yeah. So Wally had a car that fit all of us. We had a big van, and we drove around. And what you have to do is just drive around and wait till, and everyone's like their eyes peeled out their own window looking for the kolea. And they don't want you to see them, but if they're out feeding and they're flying, then if you see one land, then you have to keep your eye, look at that tundra, it all looks the same. And there's no tree or anything so you can say, oh, so you just have to like watch, don't blink, watch, I see it, while someone else walks out there. And we had little radio walkie-talkies so you could say, go left, go right. And really, it's just a really intense prospect to try to find one of these birds. And so there we are. We saw a bird, stop the van, jump out, everybody's looking for it. And there he is. And so the ones that he had these expensive satellite tags on, he had blue bands. So if we could see it with the binocular, blue band is like, yes. But then that's just seeing it, then you still got to catch it. So we got up close, we found where it was. This was a male who was sitting on eggs. The male and female take turns back and forth, sometimes 12 hours, depends on how much food the other one finds when they come back. So this male's displaying, trying to get rid of us. And then what Doug here is doing is he had his eyes right where that male had just flushed off. So he was walking out toward the nest, and there it is. You see how hard that is to see. I actually put that circle around here with my computer because you cannot see that that's a nest. So these are the two girls from BYU, the 2 students, and you see in the center where the boots are, the eggs are in there. This is another nest. It's a little easier to see, but I was standing right next to them. It's like, wait, I don't see them. I don't see. And Doug was saying, don't walk anymore because you're really getting too close. So he actually put his binoculars down so we could see, really where they were, because then you got to go get equipment, because what they do is they have a big net trap, and it's like a giant mouse trap, only it's made out of nets. Well, first they take the eggs out because they don't want to break the eggs during the trapping of the bird. So you take the eggs out and put fake eggs in, and the bird doesn't notice that. This is really common in bird biology. They don't know the difference. Isn't that amazing? So these are fake eggs in the Tupperware on the right, and then but it's a safety thing so you don't break them. And while he was putting them in water, I was kind of horrified by this, but he's the guy, right? He knows what he's doing. If they float, that means they're going to hatch really within the next day or two, because if they've used up, the chick has eaten the yolk. And so if they sink, that means they're still full of fluid. But he said these are really close to hatching. So they have the fake eggs in, and then Doug puts this is a sort of a mousetrap style net that Wally made, and it's even got the mousetrap spring. He takes the springs off a rat trap, and then he sits there and then cocks it. See, he's pulling it back. It's a double net. He pulls it back, and then it's just like the mousetraps. It's just like a hairline attachment. So as soon as the bird steps on the edge, it snaps the net over its head. And so there he is marking, because the bird's not going to come anywhere near it with us. So we got to put a flag up there, but not too close, because those birds are so smart that they won't come back if the flag is too close. Then we go back to the car, send out the undergrads, the kids, to sit in the field while Wally, Diane, and Doug and I are sitting in the car, and we said, well, that's what you get when you're an undergraduate, right? They were fantastic young women. Really, we really enjoyed them. So then wait for the bird to come back and get caught in the net, which it did. So then they would just raise their hand and then we all go running there to get it out. And Wally said he's never had a bird hurt from this either. So that's good. They've got the system down really well. And, you know, I have to say, even it does make you feel bad catching them and doing these things, but if you don't do this, you don't know anything. And so you start out where Wally was in 1979 and on We Talk saying, I have no idea where they came from or where they go or anything. So this is for science. And there he is loving the bird like everybody does when they get their hands on it. And so Doug would put it in a bag. Wally's in the car getting all the data stuff ready because we're going to get this tag off. And the other girl's putting the real eggs back because now she can put the eggs back. And here's Wally in the car. You can see who got the crummy job. Doug's out in the rain. Wally and I are in the car. But he's a really good guy. He lives in Anchorage, and he was an undergraduate student of Wally's in Minnesota many decades ago, and just fell in love with each other as, you know, old friends. So when Wally's in Anchorage, he calls him and he comes to help. And this is what the tag looks like that was on its back. So this is a satellite tag that sends the information to the satellite. And they glue it on the back with a little drop of epoxy. Then the antenna trails off the back of the bird, and that's what sends the signal. You see that bird's not fighting at all, just sitting there. So the tag is on with a little backpack. So it goes on one wing, and then he puts the other wing, and so it's gone under his wings like that, and that's how it's held onto the back with the but held in place with the epoxy. So he's just cutting off the nylon. He uses stretchy, you know, the nylon string that we use to make jewelry that will stretch over your wrist. He uses that so the bird can grow and it doesn't hurt him as he or she grows. So he's just cutting off the little bracelet nylon. There it is, right? And then he's pretty amazing technology. Is that thing you can hardly feel it in your hand. It's so light. It looks kind of bulky, but it's pretty light. And see its little backpack. See, it was on one was in each wing. And now he's looking at the back of the bird to see if it hurt him, because he wanted to know if we put a little up. And he said the feathers were all really looking good. And you know, birds molt every year, so even if it lost a few feathers from that part of its back, it would grow them back. But he said he didn't see any evidence of any damage, so that was really nice. There he is, the bird saying, what the heck? And it was my 70th birthday this day. So Wally said, Susan, you get to release the first bird. So it was a really grand moment for me, probably the best birthday present that I've ever had, and the real joy of having a birthday on the solstice in Alaska, in Nome, where it's light out every night, and I am releasing the bird. And I wanted to show you this because Honolulu is a big place in Nome. See, everybody in Nome is like, you're from Hawaii? Why are you here? What are you doing here? Because a lot of them come to spend a lot of time in Hawaii in the winter. And so the great part of this story, one great ending, it's not really an ending, but I have been writing about these birds for so long that all my columns have been online since 1996 on my website. So if you don't subscribe to the paper, you can read them on my website under Ocean Watch. They're a week late. That's the deal I made with the paper, is they get it it's theirs for the first week, and then after that it's mine again. So and it's also it comes up on Google. My website's columns come up, those headlines. And so the BBC called me on the phone one day. I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. It was a producer named Evie from Bristol, and she said, we want to do a series on, we saw your columns, and we were wondering can you find people who have tame plovers who will come when they call them, and that we could come and film because we're doing a series on islands. And this was one of the things she thought was really cool. And this is my neighbor going, "Pluffy, Pluffy, Pluffy, Pluffy." See the birds on her roof. And she's got her crickets in her hand. And the BBC is filming this. So I took a few shots, but it is great. I found 3 couples. I put in my paper in the column, if you have one that comes when you call them and you feed them something, please let me know. So I sort of scouted all this out before, one in Hawaii Kai and a couple in Kailua before the BBC team came. And then this is another woman, and she's got, I don't know if you can see, it's not very clear, she's got a framed picture of kolea that she brought down from her living room, that she had taken a picture and framed it. And so while we're talking, she's fiddling with it, and I think, what is she doing? She's fiddling with the frame, and she pops off the back, and all my columns were in there. It's really a moment. I really loved her. Her name is June, and she lives in Hawaii Kai with her sister, and they had a plover that they feed that they could call. So I've had so much fun driving around meeting these people who love these birds as much as I do. And this is Evie bent over. She's doing some recording, and the cameraman's filming. And so, when you see these nature shows with the BBC, you think these people must just love these animals. They must be the nicest people in the world. And you think, well, or maybe I'm dreaming. I mean, maybe I'm projecting that, because the film industry isn't really renowned for being really nice people, right, in general. These people they're so nice. They're just the best. We just had so much fun. And so, I took them home for lunch, and we really had a good time. And they went to Midway, and they filmed kolea for several days. And then I said, the bird, do you ever heard about these birds called white terns? The new book had just got an advanced copy from Hong Kong, and they had flown it before the rest of the white tern books came. And they said, no, what are white terns? So they went out with Rich on his walks. One of our board members and great volunteers with white terns gives tours. And so the white terns and the kolea and the albies from Midway are all going to be in a BBC special on islands in 2020. So we're all really looking forward to that. So this is Wally's in my book, and the great thing of having the book is I forget some of the details, and so I can look them up. I have some place now to get the answers to the questions that people ask me. And if you would like a book, please order them from the Hawai'i Audubon Society. There's a tab on there called store, and then they'll send you one. So do you have any questions? Oh, lots of questions. Yes.
Could you say something about how they navigate, how they find the right place going 1,000 miles?
Yeah, the question is, how do they navigate going 3,000 miles? Well, no one knows. So I can't say much about it. They know. They have some kind of navigation, internal GPS system, and they just do it. And no one really, the idea of the chicks coming for the first time, having just hatched in Nome and making it to Turn Island and Midway. I've seen them, the chicks in all the Northwest Hawaiian Islands working there. It's an amazing thing that any of them make it, but all the shorebirds, migratory shorebirds, all have some kind of internal, maybe magnetic, no one really knows, but good question.
How high do they fly?
Real quick. We got 6 minutes.
How high do
Yeah.
they fly?
Keeping notice.
Wait, yeah, just have a few more minutes.
Q&A mode.
I'm not sure how high they go. I think up in the jet stream.
Yeah, that's pretty high.
Yeah, it's pretty high and it's cold. So, but I'm not sure that they know the altitude. I want to say 30,000 feet, but I think that might be too high. I don't know. Yes.
You know how large of a group they swarm, right? Together?
Yeah. How large of a group do they fly? Wally said that he has seen radar pictures of flocks of shorebirds in Alaska going north, and you can't tell one species from another, so he doesn't know, but he thinks they maybe join together with other species. But they're quite large flocks, but you can't really count them on radar. You just see the bleeps, but it's big enough to show up on radar.
So over 100 birds.
Yeah, probably over 100, yeah.
So to
Yes.
get really close to one, you would feed it. Is
That's the way you got really close.
Yeah, the way you can get close to one is you can feed it if you can feed it without feeding the other birds. It's pretty hard because I have a corner I can go around. And so the other birds don't quite get what's going on. If I give them a little bird seed with the doves and all the other birds can go around, because I live on a golf course where there's birds all over. It's tricky. People do it. It happens. Yeah. Yes.
I want to thank you for your article, the Star Advertiser, for feeding the scrambled eggs. I collected scrambled eggs for 4 years.
Oh, nice. Oh, great. Well, see, it happens. And the people I found didn't seem to have any other problems with other species. So it seems like the kolea come closer. So you just do what you can, right? It's fun. It's really fun. Yes. Oh.
It's pretty important of the Hawaiian bird.
Well, that's the beauty of the University of Hawaii Press. They're very, very well aware of those things, so, yeah. Yes?
Any plovers in the Atlantic Ocean?
There's American golden-plovers that live on the Atlantic side and that side of the U.S., and they migrate to Brazil and South America, but it's a different species. They look similar, but they're different species. How are we doing?
Okay, 4 minutes.
4 minutes. Okay, Colleen.
The
Yeah.
shoreline plovers, are they really plovers or are they cousins? The ones
Which?
that aren't on green grass, they're on the beach.
I think they're all the same species. Do they look different? She's wondering if the ones on the shoreline are the same as the ones on the lawn.
The ones on the lawn are very territorial. The ones on the
Right.
beach seem to hang out in a group.
Well, Wally said there seem to be some individuals that will actually congregate, more so than others. I haven't seen that happen, but that may be. He said some are really territorial, and it says in the book, most are very territorial, but some will actually communicate with each other, and they'll share foraging grounds, and it may have to do with how much food there is.
The
So,
name, Hawaiian name is different too, I think. Kolea is different from Akeke.
Oh, that's the Ready Turnstone.
oh, that's the ready turnstone.
Turnstone.
That's the ones we saw that they got the chicks. Yeah. Yes?
Susan, I know we don't know how they do the navigating, but when the bird is flying, do you think the bird is searching for thermals or better favorable winds? Do you think they sense that and change?
Well, it's a good question because we're all worried about the hurricanes, when they're migrating in August and September, and we've still got hurricane force winds. But yeah, no one knows for sure, but certainly they try to go to where the winds are the most favorable. Yes, they're smart enough to do that, but no one's tracking them during the hurricane. One good tracking story is one of the tags we took off the birds in Alaska. We caught 4 of the 6 birds, which was great because he got 4 of his tags back. And one of them, I found out later when we got the satellite information from the Audubon Society in Alaska, in Anchorage. One of those birds was at Goldsmith Island where Craig and I had anchored Honu that year. And so we did know. I said, I do know you. You know me. You don't know, you know. So we were all really excited. It was a grand moment to find out that I had migrated the same distance as that bird on Alaska Air, right?